I tell you, what a great episode this week. And it's only the second one of the season, so I love how they throw you curveballs and you never know what's coming next. Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 2, The Lion and the Rose. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters and Starks and Lannisters and Baratheons and Targaryens. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and the epic and the medieval and the just fantastical, awesome soap opera that is Game of Thrones. Last night's episode was a real shocker, and it was a real shocker to me and probably many who have not read the books, especially at the end. The episode itself, I'll break down in pieces over here, and the episode itself, I felt like there was some good high points to it, but I felt like it was just kind of clipping along at a normal pace, and then at the end, it was like, wow, you know, so definitely good stuff. As always, the reviews that I do contain spoilers, so if you have not seen this week's episode, certainly, you know, you have to pause this or click off, go watch it, and then come back and see what I have to say about it. So, the episode opens up, though, and I'm going to kind of go over some of the high points that I think are some of the more important scenes. We wind up seeing in the area of the Dreadfort where Ramsay Snow, that's Roose Bolton's bastard son, the one that wound up taking Winterfell back, and of course capturing and mutilating Theon Greyjoy, cutting off his wiener and all that stuff. So, and don't get me wrong, I don't agree with what Theon did, but just don't believe you should ever do that to another man's or woman's private areas. Just just a personal rule of mine. But whatever, it is what it is. And it starts out, there's this woman running through the forest, and she's being chased in this sadistic game of, like, tag. You know, there's dogs going after her and everything else. Seems like she's just about to get away, and all of a sudden she ends up taking an arrow to the leg from this Ramsay Snow. And you can see that basically this guy he's a psychopath. I mean, if you couldn't tell that from last year and from what he did last season to Theon, he's batshit crazy, you know. They wind up letting the dogs devour this girl, and I think all because she looked better than, or she was presumed to have looked better than somebody else in the castle, or somebody was jealous. I couldn't even really get it. Was basically for no reason, you know, just because, hey, we can. So, nonetheless, though, the scene that was really good that I liked is when his father, he gets back, Roose Bolton. And if you remember, that was Jon Snow's, I believe it was his uncle, and he was ultimately the one that wound up stabbing him, not in the back, but in the throat, in the chest, at the Red Wedding last year. And what he wound up doing, he was the one that said, you know, the Lannisters send their regards. So he was obviously paid off and promised by Tywin. We find out that he was actually promised the North, but he has to take back Moat Cailin, which now Theon Greyjoy, his father, Balon Greyjoy, and all the Iron Islanders, they occupy right now. So that was the deal that we find out, the back-end deal, the backroom deal that was made for him to obviously go and stab Robb, not in the back, but in the throat at that Red Wedding. So, and to partake in that, to be part of it. So, so anyway, he winds up talking about how he wants to, you know, he wants to trade Theon to Balon, you know, to have that back. And this Ramsay is batshit crazy. He goes, we already tried that, you know. And he's like, what do you mean? You're my bastard son. You don't even have my banners. I guess anybody who's a bastard that's in the North, their last name is Snow. Obviously, Jon Snow, Ramsay Snow. You don't even really have the power or authority to have my banners, you know. But this kid is a complete psychopath. So anyway, he talks about how he mutilated Theon and everything else, and he calls him Reek now. And at first I thought it was Freak. I wasn't really sure. And anyway, there's this real tense scene that it was one of my favorites in the episode, where he goes and lays back and has Theon use a straight razor to go and give him a shave, right? And all the while you know, because he wants to prove to his father that he's broken Theon, right? That Theon is, number one, he's of no use to us anyway, so it's okay that I mutilated him and fucked him up and punished him and everything else, because that's what we do. It's okay. And number two, it doesn't matter because his father doesn't give a shit about him and doesn't want him back anyway. So that's okay, right? And this scene, though, as he does it, man, and Theon's, you know, he's trying to irritate Theon and to show his father that this guy's not going to cut my throat. And he could have slit his throat at any time. And for me, the whole crux of it was when his father, Roose Bolton, talks about, you know, about the whole Red Wedding and how everything went down and how Robb Stark's dead. And then Ramsay's like, oh yeah, that's right, Robb's dead, you know. He put a knife in his chest. I'm like, oh my god, I was just waiting for Theon to just flip and just lose it, you know. Nonetheless, though, we find out that that Roose is obviously he's power hungry. He wants to have the North. He wants to be the the warden of the North, and that's what was promised to him by Tywin Lannister. And the scene winds up ending after he goes and he puts Ramsay in charge of. He says, "Listen, take Theon, and take I don't know how many guys, and go take back this moat, Kaelin." And that's really kind of where we leave that one at. We do get another scene, and I'll go over it briefly, but I didn't find it too interesting. And this is the problem with having so many threads to follow. This week, we didn't see Jon Snow. We didn't see the Wildlings. We didn't see Arya and the Hound. We didn't see a number of different characters. We didn't see Daenerys at all. And it's because you have so many different stories to follow, you really have to kind of alternate episodes with some of them, and then some of them will overlap, and you can see each episode. But unfortunately, some of the weaker stories that I feel kind of came into play this week. Now, we saw Stannis, who we have not seen since last year, since last season, and they're, him and the Red Lady are ritualistically burning some of his people that wouldn't denounce their gods and banners and everything else, to take up the Lord of Light. So apparently that's how the Lord of Light, cleanses them. They just burn people alive at the stake. And then we kind of get this awkward, just sort of family dinner between Stannis and his wife and this lady in red, right? And it's just really goofy. The whole scene, to me, was kind of a throwaway scene. I didn't see a whole lot that came from it, other than the fact that supposedly their daughter is getting out of hand, and they've asked Melisandre, the Red Lady, to go and talk with her. And she does. She goes and talks with her and explains to her about there's no 7 heavens and 7 hells. And really, for any of those of you that do believe in God, in Christianity, you realize that there's only supposed to be 1 heaven, 1 hell, all that sort of thing. But they obviously they have the old gods, they have the pray to the 7 gods. There's a number of different things going on as far as theology and the religion that's behind it there. But what she winds up telling her is, she says, there's no hell except for the one that we live in. There's only 1 hell, and it's the one that we live in right now. And that was the profound moment, I think, for that scene. We then go and we see, we wind up seeing Bran and company, Bran and Hodor, and God, I always forget that, Jojen, I think, and Mira, I believe, is his sister. And if you remember, Rincon and the Wildling chick, they separated from them at the end of last season. But anyway, their story to me is very uninteresting. I think it'll play a part in the future. This Bran is able to, obviously he's a warg, he's able to look through and kind of almost like personify or like embody, have an out-of-body experience while he's sleeping and go into animals. So he's running around in his wolf while his wolf's eating, and he can actually taste the meat and everything else. They wake him up because he's been out for hours, and they explain to him, this Jojen explains to him, listen, dude, you can't, if you live too much in that out, you'll forget how to come back. That was the profound part of that scene. They wind up coming across a tree that has one of the faces of the old gods carved in it, and that was back from the children of the forest from those days. They prayed to the old gods and everything. And Bran sees this vision. In this vision, he sees dragons, it looks like, over King's Landing. He sees his father. And then he kind of gets this thing in his head about how, come to me and I'll be underneath the tree, beneath the tree, something. It's some kind of profound statement. We don't know what it means yet. All of a sudden, he just kind of looks up and he's like, I know where we have to go, or I know what we have to do. So that was really the kind of scene with that happened. So that takes care of all the kind of side stuff that happened. We do get, I thought it was a nice scene, and really some of the scenes in here, to me, the dialogue is written so well, it's almost, it reminds me of almost like Quentin Tarantino type movies where there can be no action for 10 or 15 minutes, but just the conversation and the dialogue between 2 or 3 characters is just so superbly written that, I mean, you're just like, wow, this is great. It's so on point, so key. And you get a lot of that in the King's Landing area of this. First, it starts out and we have a brotherly bonding moment between Jaime Lannister, the one-handed Kingslayer, and Tyrion. And Jaime, of course, is struggling with his one hand. He spills some wine. He kind of feels like a dope. But I think that he identifies better now with Tyrion because Tyrion's always been made fun of. He's an imp. He's shorter. So there's a lot of different things that he can't do and limitations he have, almost like he's handicapped as well. So they wind up talking to each other, and Jaime, pretty much confesses that, listen, I can't protect the king. I can't even use my left hand. I mean, I can hold a sword, So the whole thing that came out of this is, number one, I thought a little bit of nice dialogue and bonding between these 2 brothers. But number 2, it was one of my favorite characters, Bronn, winds up getting tasked with actually kind of meeting in secret with Jaime Tyrion, you know, says, hey, listen, I know this guy that can help you out, and Bronn will be very discreet about it. And the scene between them was really cool because they meet, they meet at this little kind of far off area, you know. And Jaime, so Jaime's big thing is he can't have anybody knowing. If anybody knows that the Kingslayer cannot fight properly and is learning and training to fight, he'll have no respect, no, you know, whatsoever. You know, I mean, he won't even be able to be in the King's Guard, I'm sure. So, anyway, Bronn meets up with them and he says, "Are you sure this place is, you know, is safe?" And he says, "Oh, do you know this Knights or so and so?" And Jaime says, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "Well, I fuck his wife here, and if nobody hears her screams, then they're not going to hear us, you know." And I just love Bronn, just the way he is, just his casual way of working. And then so we see this scene between them where he's teaching Jaime how to actually fight again and how to fight using his left hand, which I thought was pretty cool and pretty profound. Just the way it was laid out and everything else. And again, Bronn is a character that I really enjoy. I enjoy his dialogue, and whenever he's on screen, I just really like him. So everything, though, has been building up, though, to the wedding, this wedding between King Joffrey, who everyone loves to hate, and of course, Margaery Tyrell. Now, the cool thing about this whole setup is we wind up seeing the wedding itself, right, in the chapel or in the cathedral and whatnot, was just very, very quick, and just, there was really nothing of importance that happened in there, except for Sansa kind of looking on, you know, and Tyrion going, "Yeah, better her than you," you know, because now she's the queen, right? Better her than you. You don't want that, trust me. So then they kind of do this, like, I don't know, I guess almost like the, it's almost like the reception, but it's sort of like this this pre-party where they're given gifts and things like that. And we see the second sword that Tywin had made in the last episode in the season premiere. He had the two swords made that were melted down from Ned Stark's sword of the Valyrian steel. And he gave one, of course, to Jaime. The other one was given as a wedding gift to Joffrey. And when he gave him this gift, it was only after Tyrion's gift was this book that he gave him, right? And of course, we know that Tyrion and Joffrey hate each other. You know, Joffrey is just a little punk, and so he winds up taking the sword and, just like the little temper tantrum prone teenager that he is, starts going and chopping up the book with it like a little bitch, you know. The whole build-up between a lot of this was great because you see these two older people, and as far as I'm concerned, anybody who gets to be beyond like 40 in Westeros is doing something good, because even the highborn and everything like that, I mean, there's constantly somebody's backstabbing, overthrowing, poisoning, going to war, whatever. So you've got Tywin Lannister, right, who to me is one of the best actors and one of the strongest characters in the movie. And love or hate the Lannisters, it doesn't matter. Tywin himself, the actual actor that plays Tywin, does such a great job, such a superb job, delivers the lines with just such great, oh man, it's just such passion, you know. And then I love the grandmother of Margaery Tyrell, Olenna Tyrell, I believe her name is. And these two are walking with each other, and they're having this old people conversation, you know, about money and how much it costs for the wedding and the this and the that. And the greatest thing, and I just love it because it's that Quentin Tarantino type dialogue where it's just, you know, sticking each other with these little needles, you know, kind of trying to one-up each other on everything, you know. And she's talking, and then she goes and throws the Lannisters pay their debts type of thing, you know, back at him, you know. And just, like I said, just superb the way that this whole thing went down. So when we actually get to the reception of the wedding, right, and this is getting towards the end of the episode, and this for me was the part that really wound up being the payoff. And the reception scene was very long and it was kind of drawn out. But then when you see what happens at the end, then you appreciate it much more. But while it's happening, I was sitting there going, God, this is just ridiculous. So they're at this reception. And people are, you know, there's various performers and all kinds of things going on. And Joffrey is just basically being a little punk, right? And Jack Gleason, the actor that plays him, you got to give it up to this kid, because, you know, I think he's probably of teenage years in real life. He's got to be. And this kid, I mean, from the first time I saw him, the first scene he was in season 1, I hated him. I absolutely hated him, and I think a lot of other people hated him too. Excuse me there. Had to wet my whistle a little bit. Been talking too much. But you love to hate him. And that's the mark of a good actor. When you fill a role and you play the role like you're supposed to, people are supposed to suspend disbelief, right? And look at you and realize, even though this is a work of fiction, I still hate you. Joffrey was so hated that if I saw him walking through the street, just the actor, I'd probably slap the shit out of him. I'd get arrested and everything else, but that's how much rage wells up in me and probably millions of others when they see him. That means he's doing a good job, rest assured. So as this reception goes and kind of drags on, you just see him just sort of doing some of the douchey like things that he does, just sort of exerting his force and his will and his power, while everybody else just kind of stands by and just sort of makes faces like, oh Jesus. Olenna Tyrell, Marjorie's grandmother, comes over by Sansa, and I thought this was great, right? She comes over by Sansa, and right just a couple of chairs down from Joffrey, within earshot distance, she goes and says, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother, because obviously it was just recently that Robb Stark was defeated and killed and whatnot. And she goes, I know war can be a distasteful, hateful thing, you know, where bad things happen, but it is so wrong, is basically the idea of what she said. I forget the exact words, but it is so wrong, it's such bad form, it's to kill somebody at a wedding. A wedding that's supposed to be a happy time, a wedding when everybody's defenses are supposed to be down. It's almost like one of those unsaid rules, you know, like, listen, you don't kill somebody at a wedding, let alone murder everybody, right? So, to me, that was her jab at Tywin, just at the Lannisters, at Joffrey, of course. And I thought it was great how she did it, because she just does not apologize for anything, you know? And there were so many great scenes. There was a scene between Cersei and Brienne of Tarth, where Cersei straight up like confronts Brienne about, first she makes fun of her because she's a lady, but she doesn't act like a lady, she bows like a man, everything else. But she winds up accusing her of being in love with Jaime, which Brienne doesn't deny. So Brienne definitely does have the hots for Jaime, which I felt like anyway, I felt that was coming. But the dialogue, again, was great. It was just done so well. Then, if you remember, Marjorie's brother Loras, the one that he plays for the other team, him and Renly Baratheon were having some relations there before Renly got killed in season 2. And Loras is sitting there talking with Jaime, right? And Jaime's talking about how you'll never marry my sister and this and that, you know, Cersei and blah, blah. And even though he's supposed to be. And Loras looks at him, and I never really liked this guy too much until yesterday. He looks at Jaime, and he's just like, well, neither will you. I'm clapping. I was clapping. I'm like, oh, brother fucker. Oh, brother fucker. And that's what I like to call Cersei. I like to call her the brother fucker. You know, I know it's a little bit harsh on the language there, but I thought it was a nice play on words as opposed to mother fucker. Very, very good stuff, though. Like I said, the way everything was played out. And then we get Tywin, and we get Cersei comes up and talks with Prince Oberyn. If you remember Prince Oberyn, the Martells that comes from Dorne and everything like that. And if you remember too, Cersei's youngest daughter was shipped off to Dorne back in season 2. I'm rewatching the series as well, so I can pick up some of these things from by Tyrion when he was Hand of the King. And it was done for political purposes, obviously. But we get this great dialogue between them too, which I thought was great. Prince Oberyn goes and he keeps making jabs at Cersei, you know. Oh, the Queen Regent. Or wait, no, should I say former Queen Regent? So I guess you're just Lady Cersei, right? And then he goes and he says something to the effect of, oh, wearing the crown, the burden of wearing the crown for all those years, 17 years or whatever it is, must have made your neck very weary. And then she comes right back and she goes, well, I guess you'll never know. I wish your older brother could have made it, because he's second in line to get the throne. His brother, the prince who wound up, the older prince who couldn't make it because he has gout or something like that, he'd actually be the one who'd experience the throne. It's an outside shot, a long shot, that he'd ever be able to sit on the throne, this Oberyn. So again, just the jabs back and forth were just so great, man. It was, I loved it. That was the part of the episode that I loved. And some people probably don't appreciate that. Some people I came into Game of Thrones starting to watch it a year or two ago with my wife, and I thought that it was this crazy epic medieval fantasy type thing with swords and sorcery and dragons and all that type of shit, right? You know, like King Arthur, you know. And after a few episodes, I was kind of let down, but that's because I went into it with the wrong mindset. Once I started realizing that it is a cleverly woven, intricately woven story with layers upon layers upon layers and different subplots in this, and basically it's a fantasy soap opera. It's a medieval soap opera. It's a soap opera set in these times, right, in this fictional world, in this fictional land of Westeros, but so cleverly woven together. And George R.R. Martin, you really have to give this guy props. I mean, I have read some epic fantasy tales and things like that, many large series and everything else, and I'm going to be diving into this one very soon, probably once this season finishes. But you have to give it up to this guy. He wrote thousands of years of history for characters that, by all intents and purposes, may never even become important or popular within the series, the television or the book series. It's just such a great job. Just such a great job. You really have to, you really have to give your hats off to him. So the whole point of this episode, though, and then Joffrey goes and he has some dwarfs come out, right? And they're dressed as the Five Kings, the War of the Five Kings, right? Balon Greyjoy and Stannis Baratheon and Renly Baratheon and then of course Robb Stark and then himself King Joffrey. And after they have this goofy little thing where they're riding around on these fake horses and everything like that, you know, that are kind of attached to them like costumes. Then the midget or the dwarf that's playing Joffrey winds up going and he's like humping the Stark wolf helmet or whatever, and the whole time Sansa's just sitting there uncomfortable as usual, because he's talking about how he took off Ned Stark's head and everything else, and he's just a little prick, right? Love to hate him, and after this all happens, he goes and Joffrey makes a jab at Tyrion, his uncle, and says, oh, you should join in this and that. And then Tyrion gets up and makes one of the best speeches, hands down, so far in this show. And I believe this actual episode was written by George R.R. Martin, so very, very cool stuff, and you can see how it comes through if you listen to the dialogue. The little speech that he gave back, that he spit back at Joffrey, to me was worse than him pulling his pants down and whipping his ass in front of everybody. He basically called him out for being a bitch. He called him out for being a little chicken shit king that does nothing but hide behind his power and his crown. And he did it all in such a suave, elegant, sleek way for such a short little man in stature. Boy, did he really just deliver the big words, So Joffrey starts trying to humiliate him. And, he pours some wine over his head and everything else. Then he goes and as Tyrion's going to go and leave, he says, well, you have to be my cupbearer now. And this is where it gets really interesting and you have to pay attention. While this whole scene is going on, Marjorie's grandmother, Olenna Tyrell, is kind of looking real. And you can tell she hates Joffrey, right? If you remember last season when they asked Sansa about what kind of person Joffrey was, Sansa said he's a monster and everything else. So this lady, I think, is suspect, right, for what winds up happening next. Sansa, I believe, also can be suspect for what happens next, right? Because Joffrey winds up going and knocking the cup down, misses it, and then kicks it, on purpose, and then tells Tyrion to go fetch it for him to get it, right? And it rolls under the table. And Sansa goes and picks it up and hands it to Tyrion. Now, that's the first act of kindness that we've really seen Sansa give towards Tyrion, even though Tyrion's done nothing but bend over backwards to be nice to her ever since he came and saved her ass in Season 2 when Joffrey was having her clothes ripped off and probably going to have her raped and he was threatening to kill her and everything else because he had lost a battle against Robb Stark or because his father had his bullshit and his uncle had gotten captured, who's also his daddy. Nonetheless, though, this whole scene happens very quickly, and then he winds up going and filling him up some wine, giving it to Joffrey. Marjorie, you got to give her credit, right? Because she goes and, she just wants to be queen, right? She's just banging whoever wants to be queen. But first she winds up getting married to the gay guy that doesn't want to bang her, okay? And she's hot, too, mind you. And now she's getting married to this little prick who, God only even knows if he knows how the plumbing works down there. I would be absolutely surprised if he even knew how to jerk off. Nonetheless, though, she redirects his attention again at the bullshit he's pulling on Tyrion because they bring out this huge cake, the pie they call it, right? So he goes over to go and take a slice of the cake and he goes and swings his new sword, And there was doves inside the cake that were supposed to come flying out. And he winds up killing some of the doves in there. Some of the other ones get away. And they get a piece of cake and Marjorie starts feeding it to him, right? After that, he takes a big say, I need more wine, So he get cupbearer, So Tyrion comes over and pours in the wine. He drinks the wine, and then he starts to look like he's choking, He can't breathe real good, and he's like, no, I'm fine, And Tyrion's looking the whole time just like, whoa, right? And you get a glance over at that Olenna Tyrell, and she's just like, she's got this sly look on her face like she knew something was up. As this starts to go down, that Sir Dondros, I forget what his name is, he winds up coming over by Sansa and saying, we better get out of here now. So I don't know if he had something to do with the poisoning of it, or if Sansa did when she grabbed the cup, or whatever, because Joffrey is now starting to turn different colors. He's coughing, he can't breathe. And then all of a sudden, Jaime, his dad, but we don't know, but technically the realm isn't supposed to know it's his dad, comes running over with Cersei, and I'm thinking that Jaime's going to be the hero. He's going to wind up performing CPR or whatever, right? And he's just choking on something. And, maybe the bag of dicks that he ate earlier that day. But anyway, so Joffrey's choking, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to end, with him saving him, and then all of a sudden the Kingslayer is going to be, in everybody's eyes, he's going to be the savior of the king, right? Not the slayer of the king, and it's going to be poetic because he saves his son, who nobody knows is his son, but, so as he's turned over, and they turn him over, right? Because he's throwing up and everything. And then as they turn him over and he's on his back, dude, his eyes are just like all messed up and bloodshot. And it was great, the special effects they did. They zoomed in on him, and I mean, he just looks like a zombie. He's just blue and purple and gray looking. And oh my God. So beautiful. And I'm sitting there watching this with my wife, and everybody, you know, that has read the books and stuff like that, nobody told me what was going to happen, but they said, you know, you're really going to want to watch this episode. I think it's going to be one of the better ones. And as the episode was clipping along, I was like, yeah, it's good. It's a good episode. You know, it's just a Game of Thrones episode. I mean, there's nothing super important that's going on, right? And then at the end, when that happened, and Joffrey's like, and then he takes that last breath, and he's sitting there, he's dying. And Cersei flips, right? And as he's dying, he's pointing at Tyrion because he thinks it was Tyrion that poisoned him, right? And that's the obvious thing because Tyrion was right there and all the shit he did to him. And Cersei's like, arrest him, he killed my son, you know? And the thing about it that was great is that I had to, it was probably 15 minutes after, I'm sitting there looking at my wife, and I'm like, did they really just kill Joffrey? And although she was very happy about it, I wasn't. And not because I like Joffrey in any way, shape, or form, but Joffrey has been one of the greatest antagonists in this series so far. He is what made King's Landing just vibrant and rich with all the evil, despicable shit that he did, to see how a teenager acts when given all this power, right? And his balls still haven't even dropped yet. He was one of the greatest villains, I guess you would say, that I've ever seen in a show, because I hated him so much. And so now I'm almost at that point where I'm like, man, in a couple episodes, I'm going to miss this son of a bitch. Not miss him because I loved him, but miss him because I loved to hate him, you know? So that is how the episode ends off. And it looks like, of course, Tyrion was framed, it looks like. I think it's obvious that it wasn't him. So I'm either thinking that it was Sansa or that Sir Dondry, I can't remember his name, Sir Donnis. But I'm really thinking, I'm leaning towards that it was the grandmother, that Olenna Tyrell. However, you know, does that mean that technically that her granddaughter is the queen now until they because they didn't consummate a son? How does that all work? Who does the title go to now? And really, that's my episode question. For those of you that have read the books, you know, I don't want to know exactly what happens. Please don't spoil me. But if you could let me know in the comments down below, number one, who do you think poisoned Joffrey? And number two, from your knowledge and what you know about this, who does the crown go to now? Who does the crown go to? Does it technically go, does it still stay with Cersei's, what they think is her son, which would be her youngest son, who's like 10 or 12, and then does she act as Queen Regent, or does Tywin as the Hand act as the king, the King Regent, or whatever they call that, you know, just until he's of age? Marjorie and Joffrey had tied the knot already, so is Marjorie then the queen technically? And because she has no offspring, you know. Let me know what your answer is in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next Fun Nation. Thanks for watching, and remember to check out my other channel, as well as follow me on Facebook and Twitter.